So just as a quick little recap for Stay Moving series, for those that you do not know, ultimately we started this in essence to share knowledge and insight for everybody. The goal of these, weekly is to keep a step ahead in our shifting economy. We know 2020 has been a very interesting year, to say the least. So that's the goal. This is just have a really good open dialogue, think differently, look at visuals, talk to another person within a particular industry. And the hopes is really just to come stronger on the other side. So really excited about this one. Today's agenda, we'll be chatting through travel and volunteering. We'll be going through some industry stats. Really excited to introduce you guys to Adam from this awesome brand called Have Fun, Do Good. We'll get a little bit more tactical. We'll hit on business trends, creative trends, digital trends, and then we'll end up at the end just kind of recapping this. And our goal is really just to add as much value to you as possible. So without further ado, welcome to travel and volunteering and how that intersection makes a difference. So for starters, and it was funny, we were just chatting with Adam about this before we introduced him, but as we know, travel industry has been completely disrupted in lieu of COVID-19. So a lot of the industry stats that we're seeing, right, that was predicated on, say, 2018, 2017, 2016, and all the years beforehand has completely shifted. We pulled these stats from an article that we found on June 2nd. And it's really just kind of accumulation of what they're trying to see now. And so super interesting facts. So the first one, domestic travel in the U.S. brought in over 1.1 trillion in 2019. The second stat that we found is 73% of travel planners expect to resume travel in 2020. And so that's ultimately the goal. I think, obviously, as we know, there's a lot of processes, there's a lot of things that really need to happen for us to get to that new expectation, or the new norm is what we've heard time and time again. And then I think the exciting part, right, is that, a lot of brands like Adam right now is that volunteering and bringing that kind of new experience driven to the actual travel industry is really exciting. So volunteering has a value of around 184 million a year. So it's cool to see that. And that's really what we're here to talk about, is trying to figure out what is the next step with travel and where do we go from here. And none of us, quite frankly, have the answer, but hopefully through an open dialogue, we can get ourselves a little bit closer. So without further ado, really excited to introduce you to Adam, founder of Have Fun, Do Good. So want to quickly just introduce yourself, my man?
Sure, yeah. I'm Adam. I'm the founder of Have Fun, Do Good. We provide group travel experiences that incorporate volunteerism.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Really appreciate the time that you took for this as well. Cool. So just a quick little caveat, as we said before, the way that we roll this, we'll be doing business trends. I'll be hitting on one of them. Then we'll actually ask Adam a question in particular to it, flop onto the next trend, all the way down through creative and digital. And then at the end, we'll have a nice little recap. So the first one, and this is a little bit more of like a general statement per se, but it's been really fun and exciting to see the likes of the Airbnbs and whatnot really have an emergence of new and innovative experiences for travelers. I just think with the advent of technology and just looking at other different vehicles to actually get to new places, we've seen this as a huge trend. And so I think the biggest thing for you is, before even starting the company, like, how did you see this as an opportunity in the volunteering space? And truly, like, can you just give us a little bit of background on how you started Have Fun, Do Good?
Yeah, sure. So it all started really with a volunteer trip I took with a buddy. We took an RV across the country, went from New York City to San Diego. Was working for the man 9 to 5. I hated my job and came back to the apartment one day and was like, hey, man, what do you think about taking an RV across the country and doing some volunteer work? So that's really how it started. We ended up starting a nonprofit from that trip, ran for about 4 years, and then I broke off from that and got into the for-profit space, but always knew that I'd come back to traveling and volunteering in some form or fashion. So I sold my company in 2015. Very similar to that first RV trip, I took a road trip with my buddy Ben to New York City. It was just a quick weekend trip to get out of Pittsburgh. We called a couple nonprofits beforehand and said, hey, we got 2 guys, we're willing to give up our time and energy. Can we help you out? And we were driving home from that road trip and said, hey, we had fun, we did good. And slowly but surely, we've turned into a full-on boutique tour company.
That is so rad, man. And I think it's when Nick was telling me about the company you started, I just love the idea of like traveling and volunteering. And, quite frankly, it's a new concept to me. And I just love it's in your name, right? Have fun, do good. So love that, man. That's such a cool story. The second one that we're seeing, right, and I think just innately across the board, we can argue that millennials, their expectations have shifted in all different verticals, right? And so, there's the growing needs, wants, and role of the millennial travel. I think the old way of, travel was a lot more traditional. And I love that you're really taking an industry and kind of flipping it upside down and saying, hey, we know millennials want, experience driven, type of situation, right? But then let's add volunteering, which, millennials, you could time and time again, they go for brands that actually do good, right? And they give back. And so I love that you're pairing both of those together. Can you chat through, at least from like what you've seen, what are the newer kind of needs, wants of this millennial traveler, if we can quantify that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head that millennials are wanting something a little more purpose driven. We're seeing with Gen Z as well that they're very cognizant of the brand they're following, and they want to make sure that their needs line up with the brand. So we do feel like we're unique in the travel space. We're not. We're very cautious to call ourselves a volunteer company, because that's not what we are. If you want to go do an immersive volunteer experience with a company and give 5 days to just volunteering, you can do that. That's awesome. We're very transparent with the fact that you come on one of our trips, you're going to do 2 or 3 volunteer projects. The rest of the time, you're going to be jumping off cliffs, learning how to surf.
Yes.
That adventurous side to it. So we really just tried to marry our passion for giving back with things that we like to do, whether it's snowboarding, surfing, just something very adventurous.
Yeah, and then that's what we'll hit a little bit later, but it seems like you guys have such a cool little process for like what you get out of it, right? And if you were to pay for this per se, you're going to get X, Y, and Z. And I love that you have that combo. So just in terms of this, right? I think we talked quickly about looking at, what does the consumer want, but then there's arguably the other side, right? Which is truly like the business, right? And what we've been seeing is that more brands, innately are just seeking more nonprofit partnerships for increased volunteer opportunities. And I think, it's a huge thing with culture within organization. And it's just something that, as we get older, it's just so important to give back. And so for that, I'm just curious to know, like, what is the operations like from a brand point of view for you, and then how that kind of ties into the consumer, right? Like, what does that even look like? So I feel like there's a lot that goes on to this.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts. Obviously, the do good component is something we lean heavy into. Our goal with the nonprofits that we work with is to provide our participants with a variety of different opportunities. So we're very focused on working with unique nonprofits. We're unique as a company, and we feel like, hey, we want to find some of these diamonds in the rough, so to say, nonprofits that are giving back in a different way. For example, a company that we work with, a nonprofit that we work with in Breckenridge, Colorado. We were just there pre-coronavirus in March, but they work with special needs kids on the mountain. So finding an opportunity like that is something that speaks to what we're passionate about. But also people were coming on this trip saying, well, I didn't even know that I could, ski and snowboard and help someone out at the same time. So while there are a lot of moving parts to the operations, it just kind of always ties back to the name.
Yeah. And how are you guys, I guess, just tying a little bit deeper into that, like, how are you guys finding these partnerships that you're aligning with?
Yeah, so when I started the nonprofit, we formed a lot of relationships back in, I don't know, probably around 2010. So that's definitely been helpful. We got a killer team in place. We call Anna our good getter, and she just has a knack for finding some of these unique nonprofits. I mean, she's killer at what she does, and she finds really unique places and has done a great job at that.
Is it fair to say, Adam, that a lot of the travelers and the volunteers that come on these experiences with you guys are probably more like entry-level volunteers? Because it sounds like you guys are trying to find a happy medium between people who want to travel and experience things, but they're not, full-fledged into the, volunteer space and like 24/7. If they go on a trip, they're going to be, committed to that nonprofit the whole time.
Yeah, I think it's a wide variety. I mean, I will say we definitely attract a person that wants to give back, and that ties into our mission of. I feel like there's this stigma around the word volunteering, where it's like, in my mind, like I think like I'm going to go to the soup kitchen and I'm going to serve meals to people.
Yeah.
And we're trying to change that up, and that's why I brought up the snowboarding example, because it's something I'm passionate about. And it's like you can volunteer, you can give of your time and do something you like at the same time. So yeah, to answer your question, I would say that a large majority of our people that come on trips have experienced volunteering, but they're looking to do it in a more unique way.
Yeah. I just love that because it just makes so much sense for a lot of people, right? Because I think, like you said, I love brands that are kind of challenging normal connotations of stuff, right? Like when you look at volunteering, we all think, oh yeah, I got to go down to, X, Y, and Z. And I feel like everybody has a ton of empathy for it, but there's just not, I don't want to say not the best resources available because there's a ton of resources online, but it's like, how can you do it in a creative way? And this just seems to be the solution. I love that, man. Sure. It's so cool.
Cool, thanks.
So the biggest question of the hour, or arguably one of the biggest questions, and we just had to ask this, man. What the heck is going to happen next, man? I would just love to get your opinion on this because as we know, right, like airlines, I mean, we had, Nick flew in and, a couple weeks ago and there's literally nobody at the airport. But then I've also heard the other side where there's been a ton, So I guess from your point of view, where do you see the industry shifting?
Yeah, this is such a challenging question to answer because, at the end of the day, we just have no idea. 2020 threw us a major curveball. We had to cancel over 25 events. Most of our experiences have been postponed. So we're constantly trying to pivot and figure out new ways to be creative. But, I can say that in our minds, when coronavirus first hit, we were feeling really optimistic about June. And then, mid-May, we're like, oh shit, we can't do the June trip now. So we're pushing that until August, and we're still seeing a lot of skeptical folks saying, hey, I'm just not comfortable until a vaccine comes out. So again, we really just have no idea. We're trying to be as optimistic as possible, but every industry has been impacted. I feel like the travel industry especially has just been flipped upside down.
Yeah, it's sad, it's a lot of, it's going to be interesting because I think, and I don't know the right answer either, but, I think there's certain pockets within the U.S. that will probably open up a little bit sooner than others, right? Like maybe like more of the open areas, right? Versus like the New York City that there's just more of a dense population. So it's going to be interesting to see what the airlines do. And I think that's probably a pretty good testament to it. I can also tell you it's, from my friends that have started to kind of, go out a little bit more, it has been, hey, let me jump in an RV. Hey, let me jump in something that's a little bit closer. So I'm really keen to see if, our experience is going to be a little bit more localized instead of like international, right? Or even, way across the US. So yeah, definitely super interesting to kind of see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for that. I'll pass it off to the creative trends.
Dope. Thanks, Josh. The first trend, just seeing these powerful voluntourism brands have built strong communities connected to their story, their why, their mission. Chatting with your partner, Ben, looking through your Instagram, your content, your website, you guys have clearly built a trusted community. Looking back, what has been your approach to creating this community and how has community impacted your overall business?
Yeah, I mean, community has been everything. I think our minds and purpose has been in the right place the whole time, and I think that set us apart. We're very tied into the mission behind this, and I think if we weren't, it would show. We're not this fly-by-night company. We're wanting to build something to last here, and we really do want to be influential in the travel space. And disrupt is a strong word, but if we can get people wanting to add more meaning to their vacations, then I feel like we'll win ultimately.
I
love that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Josh. Can you go to the next slide? Actually, were there any key moments in the process of building that community, like those aha moments where you knew, we really have something here?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we did our first trip. We were really just running and gunning. You guys own a business. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
Our first national park tour, I had never even been to Zion or Grand Canyon. We have 12 people paying us for this experience. And I just remember, Ben and I just like laughing about it. Like, hey, we need to own this. We need to learn everything we can about these places, act like we've been there, done it. And yeah, our regardless of that though, we're people person. We're people. We love people and we want to be around them. So our goal was how can we give the best experience possible? Right. So even if we hadn't been to those places, I feel like just welcoming people and having fun and being who we are, that really shined through. And our Google reviews, speak to the type of experience people were having.
Absolutely. And the next trend, creating engaging, impactful, and connected experiences is key for your space. It's in your name, have fun, do good. I'm really curious, how do you make volunteering fun, especially for the people that come on the trip and maybe one day they want to, swim or hike a little bit more, but how do you guys create a schedule that's really fun for people that want to, be do-gooders?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing is obviously proving to work. You got to, from a travel perspective, you have to incorporate fun elements to it, hence the name. So, in Costa Rica, we volunteer with, an environmental organization, and then we go and work at a school, and then the next day you're learning to surf. So it's just, it's nonstop. Like you just never get a chance to really like take a break. I mean, we do have chill time incorporated into it, but it's a jam-packed trip, and we want people leaving on this high and going back to their hometowns and saying, hey, I had a really great time volunteering at that school or with that other nonprofit. Right. And we want to create that ripple effect of I'm going to seek out a school in my hometown and give back in that aspect. So, ultimately it comes down to the person and how much fun they want to have out of it. But you're getting to meet new people. I mean, science has proven that, volunteering is good for your mental health. So we'll lean into that pretty hard.
Yeah. And you guys have the, potentially 12 strangers come on a trip. And I think that first day might be could be awkward for you guys. Like, how do you get these people working together? How do you get them familiar with one another? Do you guys have any icebreakers or anything you do to kick it off? That kind of
We definitely have icebreakers. I'd say one of the main components that we do every night, we go around the table and say something we're thankful for.
I love that.
We're not a religious organization, but we do feel like it's important to practice gratitude. And how often do you throughout your day do you say, oh man, I was really thankful that it was sunny today or whatever it may be. We never do that. I feel like everyone is so busy and consumed by social media, their phone, whatever it may be. So taking that time out of the day, sitting around, having a family style dinner and saying, hey, this is something I'm thankful for today. It really forces people to, take a look within themselves and just think about life outside of their daily, whatever they're doing.
And, you and Ben, I believe, go on every single trip, right?
Yes, we do. I've missed 2 experiences, but we have a couple other guides, but we go on every single experience.
How do you guys balance between running those trips and I know Ben on the content side, always creating content, making sure that you're capturing the trip at the same time? Do you guys kind of both wear hats together? How do you guys really plan that out?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tricky balance. As we've continued to grow, we're now bringing on videographers and photographers on every trip. So Ben and I can do what we do best, and that's guide the experience. As we continue to scale, that particular area has gotten a lot easier.
And the final trend here, video, photo content, providing a more in-depth look at the brand and telling a story. This works in several industries. And I think for you guys, it's a true strength just because of the team that you have. How important is creating video and photo for you guys and the brand that you've built this far?
Yeah, I think it's everything. Our trips, we feel like they're moderately priced. To some, $1,500 is not a lot. To others, it is. Regardless of how they feel about the price, we want to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible with what they're going to get. So if you do go on the site and you click a particular experience, you can see each day of the trip. So we've invested a lot of time and energy into showing, hey, this is what you're getting. So there are no questions there. It is interesting just from a marketing standpoint. We have all of this beautiful footage, but some of our best performing stuff is just the raw video. I see you have on your slide deck there. I think it's a video of Ben just tripping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that's the kind of stuff that does best, just that real raw footage.
Right.
So it is definitely an interesting balance.
Yeah, I had to throw that in there because I actually do love that, how Ben just kind of sprinkles in making fun of himself through the content with you guys. And he also has that dancing video too that I forgot to add in. And I guess my last question, every early stage has problems, or not problems, just they have to be extremely cost effective in trying to find strategies creatively to keep building their brand. Has there been any cost-effective strategies that you guys have taken out, that you guys have been doing since the beginning that have allowed you guys to keep growing on the creative side?
Yeah, so the initial investment up front, we definitely took a loss in order to capture the content. So I remember selling, some of our experience. I think our first Costa Rica trip was around $800. We did everything we could to sell that, but we knew we needed to capture that content to be able to sell more. So capturing content has been huge for us, and then just using various platforms to engage our audience, whether it's been through giveaways, which has worked extremely well for us. We built our email list quick. We built our Instagram following quick through those. Typically when people land on our site, they're intrigued. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many emails I get daily just saying, oh, what you guys are doing is awesome. It's so inspiring. So I think the brand and the name just speaks to something different in the space, which has definitely helped.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Ben, I'll pass it off to you for digital.
Cool. Adam, thank you, mate. So the digital is kind of more focused on more of a marketing perspective, paid advertising, any channels you guys are using to really grow the brand and grow the sales and conversions for experiences like this. And one of the biggest things I've kind of seen is, and this probably applies to most industries, if not all, is really this omni-channel approach of utilizing your website, your social, your different paid channels, even email, and things like that. So I'm curious from your perspective, what are some of the specifically the paid channels that you guys have explored and kind of seen success with for selling this kind of product or service?
Yeah, so we've done a good bit on Facebook early on. We were acquiring leads for a really good price. I will say the thing I'm most bullish on channel-wise is email right now. These giveaways do great for us as far as building that audience and getting in front of a lot of people for not a lot of money. And I'm happy to share what we're using for that. But I would say email and the onboarding process there has proven to be, go extremely well for us as far as selling trips are concerned.
Awesome. And you mentioned earlier on that, community is super important for you guys. And I assume there's a decent split between, reaching audiences that have already been on experiences with you guys that are most likely to rebuy and repurchase or become a part of the new experience. And then you've got this completely new audience of people that have never seen what you guys do. Maybe they haven't done tourism or volunteering or traveling as much. How do you guys kind of see the focus of where you should be going after current audiences versus new audiences?
Yeah, I will say about our existing audience is, folks that have come on trips, our retention rate is crazy high. We get around 60% of our participants signing up for 2 or 3 trips. So that's been great.
Wow.
For engaging new audiences, we do have folks that just don't want to pay that much money to come on a trip. So that said, we try to come up with a creative way to get people into our funnel. So we started a event series called Drink Beer Do Good, where we partner up with breweries across the country and make sandwiches for local homeless shelters. So that's been an extremely effective way of getting leads into our funnel, introducing them to the brand. It essentially no cost to us, just our time.
Yeah. And, I think another interesting thing about the travel industry in general is that I find it interesting to see how, hospitality, hotels, and actual physical locations can go about targeting customers, right? Because they don't necessarily know exactly where those customers are coming from. And for you guys, you're probably going to be targeting either your volunteers or your tourism or traveling type audiences. How do you go about targeting, I guess, geographically the types of people that you're going after? Because I'm sure they could be coming from anywhere of 100 different types of places.
Yeah, so we're very tuned into who our audience is. I mean, we're targeting 25 to 40-year-old millennials with some disposable income, and most of those are coming from the United States. To date, we haven't had any international travelers, so we know that we know the areas that our travelers are coming from. So targeting has been easy as we've continued to grow and scale and learn more about our audience.
That's awesome. So you're seeing like trends in certain cities or regions that people are more open to traveling and being part of it.
100%.
That's awesome. And I guess lastly for this section, you've kind of got this split between your travelers who are interested in doing volunteering and working with nonprofits, and then you've probably got another side, which is your volunteers who probably haven't been exposed to traveling as much. From your perspective, what's kind of the more valuable target audience for you guys? Is it the earlier or the latter?
I would say it's a mix of both of those. We've really not spent too much time focusing on whether or not people have volunteered or traveled before. I mean, we do have a lot of people coming on these trips that have travel experience. I will say that for a lot of folks signing up, it might be their first time solo traveling with a group, which is intimidating in itself. But I would say it's a good blend of each of those audiences.
Yeah, because I think separated there could be quite different audiences, right? People who just want to travel and get out and experience, and then you've got these diehard people who love to volunteer and love to do good, but kind of finding that mesh of people. I'm sure there's a decent sized audience for both. So
yeah, for sure.
So the next trend is really talking about the messaging and kind of how you approach, speaking to those audiences specifically. And I think this is probably relevant now more than ever, is how we go about current situations and challenges that are happening across, the US and even the world. And 2020's literally been on fire the whole year. You guys have to kind of adjust the way that you're speaking to audiences, or be a little bit more delicate to some audiences, or in terms of the messaging, depending on kind of what's going on in the environment?
Yeah, in 2020 for sure. Prior to that, not necessarily. I mean, we try to keep a very conversational tone. We want to speak to people where they're at. I will say over the past few weeks, we kind of, as a brand, just taken a collective pause. We stay out of the political side of things. That's not an area that we want to go down. We're very bought into we're putting our words into action. We're going out, we're giving of our time and talents to these nonprofits. The messaging has certainly changed. We're wanting to get the travel industry back to normal as soon as possible. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that they're afraid to travel right now. We need to be respectful to that. It's just been a giant question mark on, what messaging to put out there. Do people want to be sold a trip right now? We rely on trip revenue to, pay the bills. It's a fine line, and trying to be delicate and cognizant of how people feel.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned you don't want to get political, which is kind of where, unfortunately, the way that things are, politics generally flow into what the media covers and sort of the conversation in culture and society at the moment. Do the experiences that you guys, explore tend to ever, drift into current situations and maybe challenges in society? Or is it you kind of have this set of categories or non-profits that you want to stick with from day one?
I would say unintentionally they do. I mean, when we go to the national parks, we work with the National Park Service. They've lost funding over the years, so we stay away from the political side of that. If people want to dive in and see who's pulling funding and whatever it may be, that's on you. But again, back to, hey, if you look at our brand, you can see that we're going in and giving of our time and introducing people to, hey, this is why we're here. It's because the national parks are underserved and we're going to help them out. And that's the case across the board, whether we're volunteering with an organization in New York City or New Orleans, wherever it may be. I do think it has some political undertones, but it's not intentional on our end. It's just the culture of the world.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of the partnerships that you guys have with nonprofits are probably aimed, the purpose is really to bring value and at least bring more attention to some of these issues that probably aren't getting enough coverage anyway. So that makes sense. And then thirdly, kind of getting back to, the marketing and the advertising and things like that. So you guys have a ton of social, and I'm curious, we see a lot of partnerships, whether it's with brands or nonprofits to really build awareness, like I mentioned. How much of a focus has it been for you guys on the social side to build partnerships and gain awareness through different brands and nonprofits and things like that more digitally?
Yeah, for sure. So one of our big pushes for 2020 was working with more companies. I would say early on, a year or two ago, we were doing content for other brands on the regular. It did get really hard to balance the trips with producing content for other brands, because it was almost like, hey, this trip is brought to you by, whoever it may be, and then putting that product in a participant's hand. We felt like we were dumbing down the experience a little bit for our participants, and we didn't want to put ourselves in that position. So now we're shifting to working with more companies from a corporate give back standpoint. So we did have quite a few experiences on the calendar for 2020 with these certain companies, but had to cancel them because of coronavirus. But when things do get back to normal, there's definitely there will be a major shift into working with more companies through our experiences.
Yeah, and that may kind of drift into this question of, are the nonprofits, is there any type of audience that's leveraged through the nonprofits in order to have them kind of bring light to the work that you guys are doing in the groups that you guys are bringing to help them out? Is there a relationship that builds among the nonprofits and yourselves?
Yeah, we certainly build a relationship with the nonprofits. I think from a content perspective, we're bringing talented videographers within our network. So, a perfect example of that is, our last trip to Breckenridge, Colorado. Our videographer was killer, and he did a great job of highlighting what this organization is doing. We give that video back to them. They could share across their social media channels, and that's been the goal from day one. How can we bring some light to what these unique organizations are doing? They might not have the money to have a content producer come in, so we're able to provide that service to them, which has been really cool.
Love that, man. And then lastly, I'm just curious more on the nonprofit side. What are the nonprofits you guys have not yet worked with, or is there any top level dream nonprofits partnerships you guys would love to make that you haven't done yet?
That's constantly evolving, to be honest with you. We know there's some large nonprofit outfits out there. We try to find unique places that we think are cool and line up with who we are as people. So, the goal is just to provide a wide variety of opportunities for participants. So whether it's disaster relief to working with special needs to environmental issues, we really try to just seek out unique organizations.
Yeah, and I guess the smaller the organization as well, probably the more value you guys bring as a group to the actual nonprofit and the benefits that you can bring and the change you can make. So,
yeah, for sure.
Great, thank you, mate. That's awesome.
Sweet. Well, thank you. Just to kind of quickly, summarize this up before we have one last final question for you. So as hopefully you guys learned a lot from this. One of the biggest things is just the growing needs, wants, and role of the millennial travel that we talked about, kind of what their expectation is, and truly just, Adam and the team, have created this kind of new market for that. And so just really excited to see what happens within the next 5 to 10 years. And, my hopes from hearing this is that like this becomes the new standard, because I think it's such a beautiful way to run a business, and it's a great way to kind of hit on both the volunteering and the traveling. The second one, as we all know, the future of travel is just very unclear. There's a lot of moving pieces, from the airports to travel to the mechanics and the processes that a lot of these companies have relied on for years. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens next with that. The idea of, the process of picking cities and partnering with, nonprofits and trying to find, brands that align with them. I think one of the cool things that you mentioned earlier, and we just chatted about it, but was, what type of nonprofits can we work with to add the most value? And I loved earlier you said, how can we bring light to these nonprofits? And I think through content is probably one of the fastest ways, just from a content and a product marketing standpoint. So love that. We all know video, photo, hands down is the best way to, articulate a story, that aligns with a brand, a story, a mission, the classic quintessential, the why. Looking at the multi-channel approach to both brand awareness campaigns. You said earlier that email has been huge. I mean, arguably for most companies, email is a great place just from the beginning. And it's also a great place for retention, right? 10% off, 20% off, refer a friend, right? We see that a lot more in like direct to consumer brands for fashion. And then the last thing is just like, how do we leverage a lot more social content? And I think, let's be real, like 2020, we've seen social media become what is really meant to be, social media. So super powerful with that. So thank you again, man. And so before we wrap up, when we started Movetic, the whole thing was around this idea of stay moving. And I just wanted to know, when you first hear stay moving, what does that mean to you? And what's the connotation that brings up in your head?
Stay moving. Yeah, I guess, I mean, the name and it says it all, right? I mean, as a business owner, you have to constantly be evolving. I think 2020 is a great example, not to get too into the weeds, but, you have to pivot. 2020 threw us a curveball, and, I think a lot of people would say, hey, we're done. Like we can't keep this going. But, I think stay moving is just simple in itself, and, keep moving forward, stay positive.
Love that, man. Well, hey, keep up the good work. Really excited what you're doing. And if there's ever anything we can do in the future to help you out, definitely let us know. And, every person we bring on, it truly means a lot. I mean, you're essentially now family to us. So thank you again. I mean, I learned a ton. I mean, just speaking on behalf of Ben and Nick. So thank you again. Really appreciate your time. And dude, keep it up, man. Literally, I'm stoked to see what happens next. And we'll be following you throughout it, man.
Appreciate it. It was good chatting with you guys.
See you, Adam. Thanks a lot.
See ya. Yep.
All right, take care.